Welcome to the Power 365 show. Dileep Singh, Senior Program Manager at Microsoft for the PowerApps Portal, is our guest today on the show. As always, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/140 for this episode. This is a really great episode with Dileep. He's quite frank, he's open. There's been a lot of discussions around the licensing model, and a lot of it's really misinterpretation to a degree and how it applies to how you would facilitate using the PowerApps Portal based on the size of your user base. Anyhow, sit back, enjoy this episode. I hope you find it valuable. As always, now let's get on with the show. Hey Dileep, welcome to the Power 365 show.
Hey Mark, thanks for having me.
Good to have you on here. It's taken a bit to get this podcast set up. I think it's been about a month or so in the making, but it's good to have you online now.
Yeah, no, it has been crazy this last couple of months. So yeah, I'm glad that we are finally able to make it work.
It's good, as in lots of good stuff happening on Microsoft's side with, the public preview coming out of the portals. What's your first thoughts on how things are going so far?
It's actually going pretty well. We didn't expect it such a huge response coming from everyone in Dynamics world, everyone in Power Platform world, and even Office, modern workplace people. They are all going nuts about it. It has reached almost 6,000 portals now since we launched.
That's massive.
Yeah, and it's not slowing down. That's the thing. As we go GA, which is later this week, I'm hoping that a lot more people are going to sign up and go play around with it, which helps us to make this product even better.
That's so good. Now, just for the listeners, this week happens to be the week of, the first week of October. Just so if you hear this at a bit later date, it will have GA'd by the time you're listening to this. So get your hands on it while you can, or it'll be there for a while, of course. Now, listen, just want to pick up on that question, or that what you just said about the modern workplace folks, the SharePoint folks, quite excited about it. I'm wondering if that was because didn't SharePoint remove in Office 365 the public portal functionality they had a few years ago?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So SharePoint used to have this pretty cool anonymous website functionality, which they kind of took it out. And even that functionality has a gap in it, that it was anonymous only, and authenticated didn't used to work that well. So those customers who have a business process which they do want to extend to external audience, they have been struggling to find a solution. And SharePoint and Azure AD came up with a solution of guest access, which works pretty well, wherever you can bring people in and they can access your site. Same thing is applicable for PowerApps now as well. Just wanted to put in there. But now, as people are growing more wary of security and can't bring external people in, that's where we are coming in to plug that gap, which people were creating solutions themselves, hosting it themselves, managing it, all the whole life cycle. So which is what is being made simpler with the whole Power Platform story now.
Yeah, I love it. Anyhow, before we get into the deep and pressing questions, tell us a bit about how you got into Microsoft, and where did you come from originally?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from India. Was born up in northern India near Himalayas. In the valley though, not in the mountains. So which is kind of is bad, but at least you can see the mountains.
So you're not a Sherpa then?
Yes, I'm not a Sherpa. I cannot climb a mountain even if it is for my life. So, yeah, so I went into college. So there's a thing in India that everyone studies for these big competitive exams. I gave one of those, got into a college. Then you get all the jobs are pretty much starts from campus placement. There are companies which comes to campus, and then you try to get into one of those. And luckily, I got into Microsoft. So I'm a bachelor in information technology. And they typically do not hire program managers out of college from engineering college, because program managers are more MBAs or masters. That year, Microsoft did an experiment, took 5 people out of a pool of 136, make them program managers. So that's how I started. And that's like one of the funny thing is I have always been in Dynamics in one form of another. Like I started in Dynamics CRM when 2011 launched. Um, then went to Parature, worked there a couple of years, and came back to Seattle area and still working in Dynamics. Then moved to Power Apps, and we all became Power Platform, which is what Dynamics runs on. So pretty much always in Dynamics for all 8 years of my existence in Microsoft.
Wow. Now I just want to unpack something there. So you went to Parature. Did you go to Parature after Microsoft had purchased Parature?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
After that.
So,
right.
Okay. So you've always been a Blue Badge FTE for those 8 years, but when the acquisition happened, you were one of the Microsoft staff that went in to harvest the IP and turn it into a BizApps tool, right?
Yes, right. So I worked on the first Parature KB integration with Dynamics case management. That's the piece I was working on at that time.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to blow wind up your dress, but I've got to say that the Parature purchase was one of the best purchases, as in from the product was purchased, the intellectual property around it was, transferred into the Dynamics suite very successfully, more I say than any of the other purchases I've seen in my 16 years in the Dynamics space. Why do you think it works so well with the Parature acquisition?
I think best part there were the people. Like the biggest intellectual property Parature had were the people of Parature. We were able to retain almost all, like everyone. And they were super passionate in what they were doing. They understood business processes really well, and they were able to capitalize on functionality which Dynamics platform offers, and like bring it all over super quickly. So that's something which is a rarity, especially in acquisitions. So that's what made sure that whatever we were doing is like extremely successful.
Yeah. So when did you then pivot out of that to, ADX portals that come into the business over that kind of period of time? There was a whole bunch of successive acquisitions. And one thing I say, with the Parature, all the IP was rebuilt on the Dynamics platform. But with ADX Studios, I assume some of legacy code base is still sitting there, if we drill into the solution files and stuff. Is it intended to ultimately get it fully rewritten, that core code base that was originally there?
So, it's kind of like with ADX Studio, one of the easiest path for us was take whatever they were doing already, because they were a Dynamics ISV, right?
Yeah,
End of the day.
Of course. We remember Shan was an MVP that we knew very well.
Exactly. So the easiest path for us was take whatever ADX Studio had, build it a managed service. That's what we wanted to go into, like a SaaS service offering. So we took that code base, we moved into SaaS, built a whole service around it so we can run portals for people. And that's the first phase we did. Then since then, we have rewritten a lot of code. It's pretty much like we rewrote a lot of caching layer, how it works, just so that to adapt it more to a SaaS profile, so that we don't have to like tweak it for every customer. So that's the kind of thing we have been doing, adding like new functionality to it. I think it's going to continue like that for some time. Eventually, you never know. There's always new technology. Everything is keeps on changing. So we might end up rewriting a lot of it. But again, we have a lot of customers today on Dynamics portals or PowerApps portals. And any rewrite means like a major hiccup for them. So we'll always do it at a slow pace so that they don't have to worry about getting impacted in their business.
Yeah. So you haven't decided to like fork the original code base and then build from a fresh one for PowerApps Portal specifically?
Yes, correct. So when we started with PowerApps Portal, that's actually a pretty interesting thing. Like a lot of people confuse Power Apps with just Canvas apps, right? Like, yes, you can build the Canvas apps with like multiple connectors, but traditionally, Power Apps is a brand in a way. Like, Power Apps is what signifies building business application in a low code, no code manner. Which is can be a Canvas app connecting to multiple data sources. It can be a model driven app on top of CDS, and that's how we envision Portal as another type of app which has a low code, no code profile. Like you don't have to go and write C sharp code in order to make it work. So that's the kind of thing we envision. And that's where, when we did Power Apps Portal, we already had the tech. Like ADX had like a lot of thousands and thousands of configurations. Like I can't wrap my head around like how many configurations exist sometimes, right? So we took all of them and then we took a journey to simplify that. So that's where the new designer came in on how do you make it super simple for people to do it. So it becomes low code for people who are not really well versed with tech and can't read 1,000 pages of documentation. So that's the journey we are taking. So Power Apps Portal was mainly around taking our portal capabilities, making it super simple for citizen devs to create it, for business application people to create it, and then keep on adding new tweaks to it, like integrating it more within the platform, like making sure it works with connectors, making sure it works with CDS. So previously it only used to work on Dynamics. Now we made sure that, hey, if you don't have Dynamics application, you can still make Portal work. So those kind of things we have been adding. And the aim was never to do a fork of code base, rewrite it, and then do a migration project to move people over, because that brings like a lot more friction for existing customers, which we didn't want it to do.
So Dileep, tell me about what the Power Platform Portal is for those that haven't used it before, and kind of how it sits within the Power App ecosystem.
Yeah, so Power Apps Portal is a new type of Power App which you can create. The aim of this app is for extending the business process to your customers. As an organization, you always have like business process which have one like extending to your customers or partners or suppliers, depending on what type of business you are in. And Power Apps Portals allows you to include them in the process. So it will allow you to create a website which your customers can access through any authentication mechanism. They can bring login using Facebook IDs. They can come in using Google IDs, use any enterprise identity provider, or even have anonymous content. Like all of that is a fair game. You can, that website will be responsive. It can be multilingual. It will be fully accessible. And hence, like whenever you are publishing it out, you can be ensured that it's meeting all the compliance standard which your companies have set through.
So just when you talk about compliance, you're talking about, the various standards from the W3C around accessibility and things like that?
Yes. So WCAG 2.0, 2.1 standards, like those kind of things we do out of the box. So those things, like then you don't have to go and invest in making everything like writing it from scratch and making everything meeting standards.
And so what about your ongoing cadence then? What are kind of key things that you're thinking about in the future that may end up being part of what you're building?
Yeah, it's so one of our major focus is gonna be simplifying the experience even more. So today, in our portal designer, we can do almost 30% of the total capabilities portal has. So it means that whatever you are doing, it's only like touching 30% of the capabilities you can actually do with your portal. Now, our aim is to make sure that more and more capabilities exist in simplified experience rather than going to the portal management app. So, which means that's where we'll be doubling down on. Another key area which you'll see is like Power Platform. Like one of the best thing about Power Platform is a no-cliff story. So it starts with a simplified experience, right? And then when you have to do that little bit of extra, there's a whole layer of writing plugins and customizing UIs, doing PCFs, like all of those things. So that's where we are gonna go and enhance a bit as well, like because again, we have 13,000 customers in a way today, because every portal customer today became Power Apps Portal customer the moment we launched public preview. It all happened internally, right? So that's a very mature audience. Those are the ones who are trying to do like a lot more things with what we can offer today. So another focus will be to remove that no cliff, to make sure that we are able to provide them tools, we are able to provide them capabilities, which allows them to do a little bit more with their portal. So that's another piece we are going to be investing heavily upon.
Mm-hmm. So if we're at, you're saying around 30% today, and if we look at that no cliff story and getting further along that before someone had to actually do some development for extensibility purposes, do you have a kind of a target in mind of what you're aiming to allow, the no code, low code kind of experience to get to? Is it going to be, are you aiming for around 80% or is it a lesser number? What are you thinking?
Yeah, in my mind, it should be 100%, but that's going to be in fullness of time. Yeah. So we'll like at least in short term, because we always operate in like 2 releases a year, right? Like there are 2 major releases. So short term, we want to go closer to 50%. Especially there are things around permission management, which we haven't moved over. And similarly, like some of the authentication setup. So those are the things we'll probably start with. And then slowly move on to like other complicated pieces. Like there are other components which exist in Portal, which we want to go and enhance and add into designer experience. So that's where we'll start.
And then of those 13,000 odd customers that have moved across, have they really fundamentally seen much of a change, or how have you kind of surfaced that?
So all existing customers saw was a branding change. So there's something called Portal Admin Center. That's where you see all options to do restart a portal and do custom domain name setup, those kind of things. So that's the place where the major branding change occurred. Like we kind of revamped that whole page and made it look like all the other experiences in Power Platform, and also changed the branding to Power Apps, because that's what is the brand now. So apart from that, functionally, they haven't seen any change. They have a new option now. They can, if they were on a Microsoft CRM portals.com domain, they can actually move to PowerAppsPortals.com domain as well. But that's something like it's an optional thing. They don't really have to do that if they don't want to.
Is that configurable within that portal?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't have to raise a support ticket or anything like that.
Yeah, it's all from their admin center if they want to do it. But they don't really have to. If they are already have a brand, they're live with it, people have the URL set up, they don't have to really worry about it.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. In the old system, you'd go into the configuration settings section and there'd be a whole bunch of configuration options for your ADX portals, or even the ones that come across to Microsoft. And we're progressively over the last year seeing, if you like, the advanced settings that we used to get in there move over to the admin portal, the maker portal, that type of thing. Is there any legacy stuff still sitting in that old configuration environment, or is it all now accessible from one of the new URLs?
So it's all now accessible from the new URLs. There's still old designer experience within the portal. Like that's something we'll be deprecating now shortly, or we'll be announcing the deprecation, which means that we want people to move over to the new designer experience. They can still access it though. It's still accessible today, even within deprecation period. It will be accessible. It's just that we won't be making any new investment in it, and all will be going to new designer.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let's switch gear and look at a bit around. A lot of people have there's a bit of confusion, if you like, around licensing, and let's see if we can clarify a bit of that for the audience. So, first of all, can you give us a better understanding of why and how the PowerApps portal are licensed?
Yeah, sure. So one of the major philosophy around portals licensing is it scales as your usage scales. So that was the core philosophy we were like trying to put it in the product and in the licensing model. So we kind of divided into the type of audience who is accessing the portal. So there are two types of general audience. There's anonymous users and authenticated users. Now, anonymous users are simple, which means like we don't know who they are. They never log in. They are accessing publicly accessible content. So for these users, pricing is based on how much they access the portal, like how many page views they do. And a page view is not just like you opened a page. But if you have like Ajax calls within the page, like those get counted. But there are things like if you have it's a sign-in page, right? Like which is used to go and log in, that doesn't get counted because you absolutely need a sign-in page in order to go use a portal. So we restricted that licensing to page views. You buy packs of page views, which I think the lowest pack is 100,000 page views a month. You buy those, you apply to your portal, and your anonymous users can keep on using it. Then for authenticated users, we kind of divide into two categories. One is all internal people, like all internal employees of an organization. Now, how do we technically say you are an employee or not is pretty simple. If you have an Azure AD ID of that organization, you are an employee. This was something which was needed before as well. If you were an employee, you needed a license to go log into portal. But only Dynamics 365 licenses were allowed. So in the new world, we extended it to Power Apps as well, which means if you had one of the new Power Apps licenses, like a per app thing or per user license, you can access the portal as well as an internal audience. In this case, you have to ensure that your login provider is Azure AD, and that's what you're using to log in. Now, the third type of audience is authenticated users who are external. So these are the guys who don't belong to your organizations. They can be completely outside. Like in a B2C world, they can be your customers. In a B2B world, they can be your dealers. They can be your suppliers, those kind of things. So for them, we charge by logins. Now, login is kind of a login per day currency, which means when you log into a website, you have a rolling 24-hour window. Within that 24-hour window, if you log in, log out like hundreds of times, it doesn't matter. It will still be counted as one. And then you buy these packs of logins. So we do multiple tiers. The lowest tier starts at $100, 100 login pack at $200 US. Then there's a pack of 1,000 logins, which is $1,000 US, and a pack of 5,000 login, which is $3,500 US. So those are the three tiers available. As your volume grows, the price actually comes down.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we've had coming through is what happens when people go over the usage limits. People are worried. Are they all of a sudden, is their portal going to get bricked and stop working?
So I think it's a fair question, and that's probably the scariest thing people can imagine, especially running your business and running out of juice in it, right? So we don't do that. We do not impact end users even if you go over. So any kind of like occasional overages or like a smaller overages are totally fine. Nothing will happen. Your portal will keep on working. Just true up whenever you get a chance. However, if you're going like massively over, like if you bought 100 logins, but your portal is getting like 200,000 logins a month, then it will affect your performance, because we scale your portal according to how many logins you have purchased, and we kind of keep a buffer, but that buffer can only go to so much. So if you're going massively over, that's something you will feel in performance yourself. And when like we'll also suggest that just try to come up with like a closer value, but occasional overages, don't worry about that. Your portal will absolutely keep on working. There will not be any end user impact just because you went over a login in a month.
Yeah. So back when we talked about anonymous users, you talked about the number of page views, and you mentioned that if there was Ajax embedded in that page, therefore making additional calls on the server, that would be counted as additional calls. Is that correct?
Yes. So the way we count page views is not just the physical page you loaded. If you have like embedded content in it, like a Ajax call from a different page, iframing a page, like those gets counted as well. So in like a super technical term, it is like we basically count all IS GET requests on certain type of pages. So we exclude, for example, all static images or JavaScript files, or like if you have CSS files, those are not counted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not counting every API call, you're just counting the AJAX that make a recall as such to the server, right?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Where your JavaScript files, images, etc., wouldn't have been called again as part of that function.
Yeah, even if they're called from server, like if you're using web files and they get called from server, we exclude them. We exclude all static files which are needed to just run your portal.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you covered on CRM audio with Nick Dolman in the podcast, there was a bit of reference to could the Azure model be used for charging pay as you go. Now, and you talked about we've built it on Office 365, which has a subscription based model. Was there any thought put into the whole idea of Azure and the elasticity? If you have the overages, you get charged for what you use. It's a consumption-based model rather than a pre-purchase based on guessing what your consumption's going to be. What was the thinking that locked you into going, no, we're going to stick with the O365 billing model rather than using an Azure more consumption-based model?
So I think the primary consideration comes from the type of customers we sell to and the motion we sell from. A lot of Microsoft, like a lot of deals which Microsoft do are volume licensing based, where people commit for 3-5 year period. So for them, like these are organizations which have budgets, and whatever they'll commit to Microsoft, they'll be budgeting that every year. So getting like for them, it is very difficult to like completely base it on Azure model. Like people do that, like people do pre-commits in Azure as well, but it becomes very difficult for a SaaS product. So that's why the model which makes most sense for them is, hey, let's pre-commit to something. Let's make an educated idea on how much this is going to be used. Buy that, and if we go over, as long as we are not terribly over, we can true up at anniversary, or we can true up at any point of time. So that's the primary reason why we went with this model. And same in CSP as well. Same in like a partner-based selling model. Those are pre-commit. Those are done for a year, and same model applies there as well. So that's why like the majority of our customers fall in that bucket today. And hence, like it made more sense to optimize model for them.
Totally. So there's been a bit of confusion around the 24 hours for unauthenticated users. Can you kind of add any more to clarification around? People are going, is it? You've already said it's a rolling 24 hours. Tell me how you see it working.
Yeah, okay, sure. So this is for authenticated users, external authenticated users. So basically the concept is like when we say you pay for every login to the portal, it's not that like a lot of people come back and said, hey, you know what, I do session timeouts of 15 minutes, like where people just get timed out after 15 minutes, they have to log in again, right? And which doesn't make sense, because now you're going to charge me for every single of these logins. And we were like, probably not, like that doesn't make like sense at all. So we came up with this like whole login per day thing, or login per day pass thing, where the moment you have logged in once to a portal for next 24 hours, that's like your free period, which means you logged in, let's say 15 minutes later you logged out, and then half an hour later you logged back in again. So within that 24 hours, if you logged in even like 50 times, we still count it as one. So imagine it's like you bought like a day pass to your portal, and once you have used it, you have 24 hours to use it as many multiple entries, like as many times as you can. Once your 24-hour period is over and you log in again, that will be your second login. So which means practically a person cannot do more than 30 logins a month. Or 31 logins a month.
Yeah, exactly, for the days in a month. Makes sense. Tell me, do you envisage any Power Platform licensing changes in the near future? So let's forget anything over 6 months at this point.
Not necessarily. I think one of the things we want to do is we want to make it a sticky model. Like we have changed a lot of things, and October has been, I think, one of our biggest changes in licensing, in at least in my history in like Microsoft. So which means we want to give people time to absorb them, see like where it is working, where it is not working, provide us feedback rather than hastily making another change. So this has been like a long period. Since July, we have been providing information at various forums, getting a lot of feedback, tweaking the model as we go. But the model we have landed on October 1st, I think we are fairly confident in. It covers like a lot of things people raised in various forums, a lot of questions which people had. So we're going to stick around with it a bit. And as we get feedback, we'll try to see like where we can improve the current model. But the basic philosophy is something we are not planning to change in near future.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, can I give you a use case and tell me how you think this might be handled with Power App Portals? Is that cool? Okay, so in New Zealand some years ago, there was a major earthquake. It was called the Christchurch earthquake. And in that, I was working at the time for New Zealand Red Cross. In the aftermath of that, within the week, over $100 million was donated, via the community, businesses, that type of thing. And through that period, the Red Cross website for many hours would crash because of the massive influx of people hitting it that was unanticipated, right? Because very unique situation. It was an emergency situation. If I was running that today on the Power App portal, and, I hadn't bought enough licenses, and I'm absolutely going to smash well above the limit of anonymous visitors, working out how can they get access to that grant money or something like that. How are you going to handle those kind of massive exceptions, not tiny, incremental ramp up, but massive exceptions to the rules, so that, the customer in an emergency situation, NGOs, those type of things, can feel comfortable that they're getting the full benefits of the Azure elasticity, and things are going to ramp up to meet this unusual demand without locking out, or becoming so unperformant that people don't, stay at the site.
Right. Now that kind of situation is always interesting, right? Like there's no way you can predict it's going to happen, and it's always a massive rush. So for those, there are two options. One is you can, as a customer, you can always purchase capacity at any point of time. But given the situation you described, like I don't think Red Cross will be thinking about purchasing login capacity for their portal. So in those situations, the best course of action is give a call to Microsoft support, and we will ensure that we scale your website up to the maximum level. Because at the end of the day, like if you are a customer, we trust you. on doing the right thing. We trust you on emergency situations. We trust you on what you're using technology for is actually like making a lot of difference in the world. So give a call to Microsoft support, and we'll ensure that whatever situation you have, we are able to practically deal with that.
Yeah. Fantastic. And that's, for anomalies like that, you'd expect that, a call to support would be the way to address it. Makes total sense.
And one of the interesting thing I want to add it there, because you took example of New Zealand Red Cross, so non-profits has a very, very special pricing in Microsoft. Like, I don't know the full extent of it, but I've heard it's like really good. So you should actually all the prices which you see publicly, non-profit has a very different pricing. So in your channels, you'll be able to find what that pricing is.
Yeah, so good, so good. Okay, let's talk about a few other roadmap type features. The one I had here was, where's the planning around SharePoint file access or even OneDrive file access via the portal or PowerApps portal?
So we actually started launching SharePoint file access for Dynamics portal last year. In PowerApps portal, which are working on CDS instances, which means that there is no Dynamics apps installed. It was not available during a preview time because the equivalent thing which we depend on in CDS wasn't enabled yet. Now it is enabled. So as we are going GA, we are actually going to enable SharePoint file access.
Okay, so what you've just said is quite big news, really. So what you're saying is that under Dynamics, right, we used to go in and you'd connect your, to your SharePoint farm and set up a file access structure, and it was part of Dynamics. So you're saying, and what's landing here is that under CDS, because I'm taking it translates to CDS, this functionality, is that I'll be able to access files that are in SharePoint from CDS, similar to the experience I used to have in Dynamics.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. That is very cool. Very cool. Will that include OneDrive access?
I'm not sure. I think it does OneDrive for business, but I haven't played around. Yeah, I haven't played around with it for a while, so I might be mistaken there.
Yeah. James Phillips often talks about the 5-5, 5 minutes to switch on, 5 minutes to productivity or access or working. Tell me the setup of a Power App portal from scratch. Have you done any time trials? How quickly you can get them up and running?
No, like you always have to do time trials. Like that's something which is like becoming a core. So we actually we try to optimize our trial experience where people are actually trying it out. They should be able to do it quickly. So one of the experience we optimize it was like a brand new CDS org, which you are setting up. You are creating a brand new portal, and that experience, it actually happens in less than 40 seconds today.
So not the scripts running on the back end, but for me to enter all the details you need from me. So as well, do you have a feel for the total time?
Yeah, so that's something we time trialed. I actually I think I demoed it in Embass last time.
Yeah. How quick roundabout?
It's almost right from starting from scratch, creating an environment, creating a database. Total came out to be 59 seconds.
Wow. Okay, so sub 1 minute. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Very cool.
And
very cool.
Again, this is not just to put a caveat. This is not for if you have already provisioned org and you already are running a business process. Then we have to install solutions like add extra metadata to your org, which takes time.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
But trying it out, a new thing, it will be super fast. If it's not, do give us a call and we'll go and fix it.
So, I love WordPress. In fact, I think it makes up some high proportion of most websites running in the world. Now, I know this is not a portal, but I want to draw a parallel. So in WordPress, we've got a concept of plugins that specifically work on WordPress websites. Is there something being considered for portals? So in other words, third parties could write dedicated plugins to provide well, let's call them controls or components to run in the PowerApps portal. So, I'm definitely talking about PCF controls here. Is it possible that people will be able to create PCF controls that are, if you like, targeted at a PowerApp portal rather than necessary Power App?
That's actually that's a very, very interesting question, because PCF, it recently went GA, so woohoo.
Yeah.
So it's actually redefining like how you build UI in Power Apps and model driven apps, right? Like in Canvas and model driven apps. So now, yes, it absolutely makes sense that we should have it working in portals. We are actually working with PCF team right now just to figure out what it takes to run it in portal. And do we really want to just take PCF and run it? What shape of form it will run? So those kind of things, especially the part you were talking about, it should be targeted at, hey, this control is for portals and this control is not for internal people.
100%.
So those kind of things.
Yeah. I just think there's unique use cases, right, that you have in portals than you would have, let's say, on an iPhone app, for example.
Right. So that's something we are actively working on. Hopefully, shortly we'll have answer on when it is coming. But right now we are trying to figure out what it takes to do it, and then see what is a reasonable time frame we can land it in.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, let's talk about resources. If people are interested in learning more about PowerApps Portals, is there any resources that they should start at? Training material? I know there were training material for Dynamics Portals, but what's been done to refresh that, and where can people find it?
Yeah, so it's actually on learn.microsoft.com. There are 3 trainings available for Dynamics Portals today. I'll always start with those because the core concept doesn't change. We are also refreshing those trainings to include all of the new designer experiences, as well as all the new capabilities which PowerApps Portal is bringing in. So that should be done shortly. We have one of the best guys, George Dubinsky, trying to go and figure out how it works and revamp his trainings.
Excellent. Because I know he did the training for the other 3 courses that are there.
Yes.
And I think who else was it? Nick Dolman, I think, was involved in that.
Right.
So it's been rewritten to be targeted against the PowerApps portal.
Correct.
I love it. Cool.
And then soon we'll have a portal in a day, kind of like app in a day and flow in a day and admin in a day. We're trying to do a portal in a day so that
fantastic.
There's like a guided thing.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, very, very good. So what about, is there specific forums under the PowerApps forums for PowerApp portals?
Yes, there are. So there's a specific forums for PowerApps portals. And I'll actually share a URL with you and we can put it in the recording.
Yeah, in the show notes. That's good.
Yep. And there's also ideas forum in it where you can add new ideas for specific to portals. They're all our existing ideas are already carried over. So don't worry if you already added them, and they are not going to go away. They'll all be there, and you can add new ideas to it as well.
Excellent. So we'll get those all in the show notes, those links. Okay, so when I knew this podcast was coming up about the 12th of September, I put up a post, and I just thought perhaps I'll just flick you the link. Have you got the link there up on screen?
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you want to just take a look? There was about 18 different messages there of people that are, I put out a question. I said about to have an interview with the head of PowerApps Portals. That's you at Microsoft. And if you've got any questions you want answered, then tune into the Power 365 show for the answers. So do you want to just take a look at that list and decide 1 or 2 questions with the time we've got remaining that you might want to answer?
Sure. I can start with the first one. It's a pretty valid question. It says, why is it called PowerApps Portals when there aren't really any Power Apps in there? So this is something we covered in the beginning.
Who asked that question?
It's from Kevin McDonald.
Excellent. Yep. Carry on. Good.
Future decoded. So basically, the whole concept around Power Apps is, as a branding, it signifies all the low code, no code platforms in Microsoft. In like, how do you build simplified applications as a non-developer? So that's where Power Apps Portal fit in. That's what we are trying to make this product transform into, where you are able to build a portal very, very quickly without trying to write like a lot of code. Uh, all right. What's the next one? This is from Thomas Sanser. Ask if they can consider the Azure model instead of pay upfront. Most partners don't have the time to micromanage licensing for extra logins, extra API, etc. So, fair ask, Thomas. Like as I explained before in the podcast, right now, given the audience, I think it will make more sense to have the upfront pricing, but that doesn't mean we are ruling out the Azure model for future. So keep providing the feedback from partner channels. I'm assuming he's a partner.
Yeah, he is. He is from Norway. Yeah. There. Yep.
Right. Keep providing the feedback through partner channels, and if we get enough feedback, yes, we will. Like, there's no reason why we won't do that.
Let's take another one. Oh, there was one from Keith Watling. He said, with language number 4, in brackets Liquid, now in the low-code, no-code world, how does he plan on harmonizing the Power Apps maker experience with the portal one?
Yeah, so eventually the aim is, yes, there are multiple languages and they are for different purpose. Like Liquid is server-side scripting, which actually provide, in a website kind of scenario, it becomes very, very easy to use because you have full access to HTTP request response, request, like access to all the Dynamics data, like, and all of that runs server side. So none of that is coming client, which means because it's external, it brings you more security if it's all happening hidden from a customer, right? So the languages will remain there. What we eventually want to do is make sure that all languages work everywhere. So we take like query expression in Canvas. I think that is one of the like oldest format of language which exists, right? Like Excel had it. Power Query is the same thing. There was a language called M, like I think back in the day. So that is most powerful, like one of the most complete languages around there. So in future, we want to actually take that and make it run in Portal as well. Why not? So that's where all of this will get synergized. But yes, for things for different purpose will still exist. Our aim is people don't have to really go and write them as much as possible. That's where it becomes the low code platform. But wherever they have to, yes, we will have multiple options for them.
Okay, let's have one more. And we've got one here from Bruce Edwards. And he said, is the new license model an elaborate practical joke on existing customers and those upgrading from ADX? ? Also, given the price point, that use case does Microsoft imagine, given internal users with a license for Canvas apps anyway, and external users are now prohibitively expensive? So a bit of a curly one there. Do you want to answer
that? No, sure. Like that's a fair thing. Since ADX days, the licensing has changed a lot. Now, obviously, one of the biggest reason why we were going into this model is previous licensing with Dynamics Portal was static, which means you paid for a particular amount of money. Doesn't matter whether it's used by one person or 1 million people. So as a company, you were shortchanged if you were, let's say, creating a dev portal, right? Or a test portal, which were practically used by like 2 people, but you're still paying full price for it. Similarly, on the other end, we were not pricing it according to market for a huge website. Like we have website today running more than 5 million page views and still paying the full price of the portal. But if you'll see in the market, that has a lot more value than that. So that's where we decided to actually take it in and make it more usage driven. So it is priced according to how a competitor is priced, how the market prices these kind of website in general, but also be practical in terms of for smaller customer, it becomes cheaper. Actually, Colin did a good like a analogy on it. For a certain type of customers, like who were running less than 1,000 logins, the website actually become cheaper now from Dynamics portals. And there are a lot of those. A lot of those customers exist in Dynamics portals today. Similarly, for people who are running massive websites, for them, we do want to make sure that we are able to appropriately scale it with their usage. So that's where the licensing model goes into.
No, I think that's a good answer, and it totally makes sense. You've got to scale for the market that's out there. And, every now and again, there's a bit of right sizing that goes on, and this is what's happening right now. So excellent. Okay, so you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
These are, and of course, not about your job or anything like that. They're about you.
Okay.
So they're going to be very deep. Going to put you on the spot. You ready?
All right. Yep.
Okay. Here's the first one. Would you rather be a star player on a losing football team or ride the bench on a winning one?
I'll be a star player in Manchester United. So the losing football team.
Okay, what do you regret not doing when you were younger?
Didn't learn how to ride a bike till I was like 10.
Wow, I mean that seems reasonable. That seems reasonable. What's your most used emoji?
:P.
:P.
Yes.
Oh, okay, tongue out, isn't it?
Yeah. Is that what it's called? I never knew what they're called, actually. So
yeah, I'm not sure if that's what it is, but that's just sort of, yeah. If you could be famous, what would you want to be famous for?
Okay. That's a tough one. I know, like maybe for podcasts, right? That can be a good thing, right?
Mate, if you're a supermodel, it'll be world peace, wouldn't it? On the catwalk. That's what they go for.
Yeah,
anyhow,
exactly.
Here's your next one. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
That new licensing is for like really for everyone's benefit. So
I love it. I love it. Well played. What's the best job you've ever had?
This job. This is the only job I have ever had in my life. Like that's actually true. Like I have always worked in Microsoft, always worked in Dynamics or like related platforms. That's it.
I love it. Who would you recommend as a guest for a future podcast?
Ryan Cunningham.
He's already been on.
Oh, he has already been. Oh, okay. Next one.
Ryan Cunningham, Ryan Jones has been on. Charles has been on. James has been on.
Next one should be Stephen Siciliano. If you haven't,
he's been on. Been on. Come on, do better than that. Do better than that.
James Solonik.
Done.
All right.
He was just on 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So, PCF guys. So get Heyman Gar, get Peter, and ask them about PCF.
Peter who?
I forgot his last name.
Okay, I'll just flick me his alias when you get a chance.
Yes, I'll do that.
It's been absolutely a pleasure to have you on the show. Hopefully you've answered some audience questions. Before you go, if people want to connect with you online, are you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on Twitter. It's @rules-are-changed. That's something I regret. So I would have changed that. But also on LinkedIn, you can find me with like my full name, Dileep Singh. So both works.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you have not left a rating or feedback on iTunes, can you please do it now? If you go to nz365guide.com/iTunes, I'll take you straight to that page. As always, full show notes can be found at nz365guide.com/140. See you next week.